Tesla's supercharging monopoly is potentially coming to an abrupt end by 2025. The company that has the largest EV network on planet Earth is now dishing out its network to its competitors from the likes of GM, Ford, Lucid, Rivian, and basically most other EV automakers. Yes, folks, you heard that right. Tesla superchargers are now not going to be just exclusive to Tesla owners, and nearly all EV buyers will be able to leverage Tesla's charging network to refill their electric vehicles, which should only help boost adoption of this new technology on the road. But because obviously EV charging is nearly not as standardized as filling up a gasoline vehicle, some important questions are arising as to whether or not this EV charging dilemma can be profitable for automakers and whether or not there's any real benefit towards transitioning to a different type of actual plug. By lending out its charging standards to its competitors, is Tesla potentially shooting itself in the foot? Or is it actually a smart strategic move from the world's largest EV manufacturer? Well, folks, that question is exactly what we're going to try to address in this video. But as usual, folks, before we get into it, make sure to drop me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So to start things off, folks, let's first understand exactly the charging network sharing that is now going to go on over the next few years and what automakers have jumped onto the boat. For those that are unfamiliar with the situation, Tesla's supercharging connector is actually much different than the connector that most other electric vehicles have to use when refilling their vehicle. As you can see, the smaller plug here is what's called as the NACS standard from Tesla, which was designed by the company more than a decade ago and has been used on basically every Tesla launched since then. Whereas the imprint you can see in the background is something called the CCS plug, which is much bulkier and more standardized amongst third-party charging standards and stations like the likes from ChargePoint, EVgo, or Blink Charging. And essentially, most auto OEMs so far in 2023 are announcing that they're going to be adopting their vehicles to match Tesla's NACS standard from all the vehicles that they produce starting 2025. What this means is essentially the vehicles are going to stay mostly the same, but the port is going to change, allowing you to access Tesla's supercharging network without the use of an adapter. Now, the interesting thing about this is that most Tesla EV owners can charge at CCS stations because of an adapter that Tesla supplies, but this has never happened the other way around until this year. And as a matter of fact, there's an important reason for why this should have happened a lot earlier. Because I'm sure many people who follow the EV industry know Tesla's supercharging network is one of the most reliable in the auto industry with a seamless integration for users today. Look, folks, a charger isn't anything complicated. It's essentially a bunch of switchgear, protection circuitry, and conversion units packed into this one box that can supply electricity from your local electric grid to your car. But because these chargers tend to be expensive to maintain, expensive and timely to install and permit, you really need a focus group of individuals to be able to deploy these at scale. And because Tesla is focused on the EV transition, they've been able to do that over the past decade. The same, unfortunately, can be said for other OEMs and charging manufacturers like those from Electrify America or ChargePoint, who have had on average a downtime of 20% in California in 2022. That means that there's a 20% chance if you show up to a ChargePoint charging station that it is most likely going to be inoperable because of some electrical, permitting, or significant delay in manufacturing capability. And because range anxiety is essentially the number one issue most EV buyers try to fix, that is certainly something you can't have if you want to transition to an all-electric transportation ecosystem. And by far the most important benefit of Tesla's system is that you don't have to pay on site and hurdle with a credit card on a receptacle that most of the time doesn't even work properly. Tesla, like most startup companies, is smart about the approach of user integration, and essentially everything is done through the app. All you have to do is plug in your vehicle and sit inside of it waiting for it to top up. You don't have to deal with any form of payment system on site. And it's safe to say that these two reasons are the primary reason a lot of OEMs are switching towards this NACS standard starting 2025. Not only is Tesla's network better, but it is also bigger, which means EVs are going to have a much easier time to gain market share. And for those interested, here's a list of most of the OEMs that have adopted this new standard and signed agreements with Tesla to lease their port. It's a wide variety of companies who are not only also developing internal combustion engines, but launching new EVs over the next few years. However, there is one important question on top of these figures that many people are still asking that isn't completely understood by most of the media, which is the idea about who exactly is going to benefit from this new switch to Tesla's NACS standard, and is Tesla as a company going to make a lot of money by now licensing out this port? And well, folks, I hate to break it to you, but I personally believe that Tesla is mostly doing this in good faith to help more EVs get on the road. Because as it turns out, making charging stations and selling electricity from them is not a very profitable business. Like I said at the beginning, folks, a supercharger or any network station is not a very complicated device. It isn't anything innovative, and it's been around for a long time. We've simply just been waiting for the adoption of electric vehicles to hit the road. And as it turns out, it does take quite a long time to permit chargers of multi-hundred kilowatts, because at the end of the day, utilities still need to be able to license and permit their own electricity lines to those stations. You need DC to DC converters, rectifiers, a substation, protection, and switchgear to be able to ensure that these chargers can all run safely. And because in most of their chargers, Tesla is not making their own power, they're simply buying it from the nearest utility or independent service operator. In contrast to charging at home, where you simply have a DC to DC converter and an AC to DC converter on the car plugging into your 240 volt outlet, charging on the grid is a lot more complicated, which is why so many OEMs have struggled to really gain traction in a reputable way. And what this new adoption from other OEMs for Tesla's plug means is that new cars are going to be now seen at supercharging stations. And although Tesla will most likely get some sort of fees from these OEMs for licensing the patent for this specific port, the company isn't really going to make any breakthrough money from selling power. For example, ChargePoint makes most of its money by actually selling the hardware to utilities and companies who need charging stations on site. And they haven't been profitable ever since going public, with a profit margin of negative 65% and a gross margin of just around 14%. Unless Tesla sells its supercharger hardware to other companies and sites, it isn't going to make any meaningful revenue from selling electricity to its competitors, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones making that electricity. And as it turns out, retail pricing for electricity is extremely cheap, which is why most utility companies rely on government subsidies and other projects to make any sort of meaningful revenue. Instead, Tesla's real benefit in this game is having the network built out and licensing the support to the companies whose economics really are not still clarified. But obviously, that is just my take on the situation. So let me know down in the comment section below who you guys think is going to benefit most from this new NACS adoption. Thanks a lot for watching, folks, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.